Welcome, everyone. I finally got up here, and it's always great to have you with us today. And thanks for watching. I have a question for us. What do you think might be the most important event in all of history, at least up to this point? What about the creation of the earth, or the creation of man? What about the birth of Jesus Christ, maybe? We'd probably be in trouble without our earth to live on. And of course, it can provide us with food to eat and air to breathe and shelter as well. And of course, if man and woman hadn't been created in the first place, we wouldn't even be here today. Now, the birth of Jesus Christ was a great thing, to have him come into the world and tabernacle with us, if but a short time. But it was his sacrifice that allowed us the opportunity to have eternal life. It was the atoning blood of Jesus Christ on the cross that may well have been the most important event in history, at least up to this point. Yes, Jesus suffered and died for us. He demonstrated his tremendous love for us and the Father by going through with his horrible crucifixion. Without it, we'd have no future at all past the grave. Could Jesus have maybe skipped the country? Well, he probably could have. Could he have suddenly become politically correct and stopped irritating the Jewish leaders? Well, I suppose he could have. But Jesus knew what the Father had planned for him in advance. He knew what he was headed for. But he didn't run away. He didn't conform to the errant teachings of the Pharisees to tickle their ears, just to make them happy. No, he came bringing the good news of the coming kingdom of God. He told us of the commandments that teach us God's ways, ways that help us prepare for residency in God's great future kingdom, ways that are far superior to man's ways. No, Jesus didn't waver. He didn't tone it down. He didn't compromise. And then he died that we might live. We'll be talking a whole lot more about the sacrifice of Jesus Christ as we approach the Passover season this year, and it's not that far off at this point. Now, most of Christianity revolves around the cross. If you listen to Christian television or most Christian sermons, the word cross is used continually. Churches have crosses on their steeples. People have crosses on their Bibles and Bible covers and other personal items. People wear crosses on their clothing and often on items of jewelry. Crosses are found on walls and freestanding on furniture. Then, of course, there's the crucifix. Now, a cross and a crucifix aren't exactly the same thing. A cross is just that, a cross. But a crucifix is a cross with a sacrificed Christ on it. Now, we see crosses and crucifixes all over the place today. Well, at least where the Freedom from Religion Foundation and the American Humanist Foundation and other groups haven't had them removed anyway. And many see the cross as the symbol of Christianity. In fact, we see literal crosses or crucifixes used to defend against vampires and other evil forces in movies and on television. But there are some that consider the cross to be an idol and actively avoid it. So today, I'd like to take a look at the word cross in our Bibles. Since some claim that the cross itself is an idol, let's take a brief look at idols and idolatry first. I think that way we'll be better able to answer the question of whether the cross is being used today as an idol. Let's begin by looking at the very first of the Ten Commandments. Of course, you probably know where that's at. That's in Exodus 20, verse 3. Okay. And again, this is the very first of the Ten Commandments. That's Exodus 20, verse 3. Now, obviously, all of God's commandments are important, but I would say that being the first commandment of the 10 listed, this commandment would surely not be the least of the 10. Again, Exodus chapter 20, verse 3. You shall have no other gods before me. Now, we're not to have any gods except the one true God. I think verse 3 is fairly obvious in its meaning. Verse 4. You shall not make unto you any graven image, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Bible in Basic English says, You're not to make an image or picture of anything in heaven or on the earth or in the waters under the earth. Now, there's some that believe we should have no images of anything or a picture of anything. That would be wrong based on Exodus 20, verse 4. I know that most of us use computers today, and computer icons are images. You know what I'm talking about, the icons on your desktop? They're little pictures of things that exist in our world. For example, a trash can icon, that's a picture of it or an image of an actual trash can. That on our computer display lets us know where our deleted files or our trash is located on our computers. We occasionally have to root through the trash to retrieve something we deleted or threw away earlier. Now, some might call these little icons idols, or not idols necessarily, but a graven image, an image, let's say, since they do often represent something on the earth. Others believe that any photograph of a person is something relating to a graven image. Of course, this creates problems when it comes time to use a computer or get a driver's license or perhaps some other type of ID. And there are some that like to have pictures or paintings in their homes, maybe pictures of loved ones, or even pictures of wildlife, like birds, for example. Would it be breaking the first commandment to use a computer or have a picture of a bird on our wall? Well, the graven image found in verse 4 is the single word, pesel, in Hebrew. It means, according to Strong's, an idol. A graven image, it also means an idol. So it's important to note that a graven image found here is defined as an idol according to Strong's. Let me read verse 4 again in the Contemporary English Version. I think this is probably a better translation. Again, this is Exodus 20, verse 4 in the Contemporary English Version. It says, "Do not make idols that look like anything in the sky or on the earth or in the ocean under the earth." So it's not just any image or any picture. It's the actual idol that we're to avoid. So what is an idol? Let's look at verse 5. "You shall not bow down to yourself to them, nor serve them. For I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments." Now here we're to see that we're not to bow down to idols or worship them. So do we bow down or worship a picture or a painting of a bird, perhaps? Well, if not, then I really don't believe that a picture or painting of a bird would be an idol. On the other hand, of course, if we thought this bird was some kind of god and tried to worship it, then that picture might well be an idol, I suppose. Let's turn over to Jeremiah chapter 10, if you would. That's Jeremiah chapter 10. And look at verse 3 right at the beginning there. I suspect we're all familiar with what we're about to read. The beginning of Jeremiah 10 speaks of what we know today as a Christmas tree. Of course, Jeremiah was writing this long before Christmas was ever observed, long before the birth of Jesus Christ. Now, I'd like to read this for something different today. I'd like to read this in the easy-to-read version. That'll be a little different. You can read along with whatever version of the Bible you have. But again, that's Jeremiah 10, verse 3, and I'll be reading from the easy-to-read version. "The customs of other people," now, those are other people, not God's people. "The customs of other people are worth nothing. Their idols are nothing but wood from the forest. Their idols are made by workers with their chisels." Now, notice that these idols, these trees, are their idols. They should never be our idols, verse 4. "They make their idols beautiful with silver and gold. They use hammers and nails to fasten their idols down so that they will not fall over." Again, this is describing what we call a Christmas tree today. These trees were idols used by the heathen or the idolaters of the past. Verse 5. "The idols of the other nations are like a scarecrow in a cucumber field. They cannot walk. They cannot talk. And the people must carry them. So, don't be afraid of their idols. They cannot hurt you, and they cannot help you either." Now, my personal belief is that an idol is only an idol if we make it one. For example, are we afraid or think differently of an evergreen tree if we happened to walk by one in the field? Nobody would pay attention to that, would they? No. Does that tree have any special powers? You're going to say, of course not. Okay. If someone were to cut that tree down, drag it inside, and place decorations on it, does it somehow gain some kind of special power then? Of course not. The question then is, basically, why would anyone do this? Why would anyone cut down an evergreen tree, bring it inside, and dress it up to look really pretty? Well, even if we believe that Christmas is Christ's birthday, and I know that 99% of those with us today know it isn't, but even then, why bring this tree inside to stare at? There was a person who was, let's say, new to the faith. They came from traditional Christianity like many of us did. Now, after learning about the ways of the heathen worship, they still continue to bring in evergreen trees and place pieces of garland around their banisters and other locations. So someone asked them why they continued to do this after they learned that this tradition was part of ancient heathen worship of false gods. So why did they keep doing this? What did they say? Well, they said that they're not observing any kind of heathen worship at all. They just love the smell of the evergreens. They said they liked the way the house smelled with the scent of the evergreens in there. Now, if that was a true statement, if they were truly just bringing in the evergreens to give a nice scent to their home, were the trees and other pieces of evergreen an idol at this point? What do we think? I would say if one brings an evergreen tree in just for the aroma, I see no idol here. I might see a fire hazard, but there's no intent of worship. There's no actual worshiping as the heathen did. But my story doesn't end here. That person was then asked an additional question. Here it is. So, if you simply like the smell of the evergreen, why do you only bring it into your house in early December and throw it out shortly after Christmas? And how does putting decorations on an evergreen tree affect its scent? Now, at that point, the person went silent. They couldn't answer those questions. But I think we probably all understand what their intention truly was. Some of us might be able to fool us, but we can't fool God. Let's read verse 5 again. I'm still in the Bible in basic English. That's verse 5, Jeremiah 10, verse 5. I think it's important. The idols of the other nations are like a scarecrow in a cucumber field. They cannot walk, they cannot talk, and the people must carry them. So don't be afraid of their idols. They cannot hurt you, and they cannot help you either. Idols are just things. Whether it's a statue of Dagon or a decorated evergreen tree, they have no power of their own. In my opinion, they're like those in the churches that claim authority over us. They have no power unless someone assigns them that power. And even then, they really don't have any power. It's all just in our minds. But God does not want us to have any idols. I think the first commandment is very clear. Who or what should we worship? Verse 6. Lord, there is no one like you. You are great. Your name is great and powerful. Everyone should respect you. King of all the nations, you deserve their respect. There are many wise men among the nations, but not one of them is as wise as you. All the people of the other nations are stupid and foolish. Their teachings come from worthless wooden idols, statues rather. They use silver from the city of Tarshish and gold from the city of Upaz and make their statues. Carpenters and metalworkers make the idols. They put blue and purple clothes on them. Wise men make these gods. But the Lord is the only true God. He is the only God who is alive. He is the King who rules forever. The earth shakes when he is angry. The people of the nations cannot stop his anger. The Lord says, tell them this message. These false gods did not make heaven and earth. They will be destroyed and disappear from heaven and earth. God is the one who used his power and made the earth. He used his wisdom and built the world. With his understanding, he stretched the sky over the earth. God causes the loud thunder and he causes great floods of water to fall from the sky. He makes clouds rise in the sky every place on earth. He sends lightning with the rain. He brings out the wind from his storehouses. People are so stupid. Metal workers are fooled by the idols they themselves made. These statues are nothing but lies. They are stupid, as it says. Verse 5. These idols, verse 15, you're right. Jeremiah 10, verse 15. These idols are worth nothing. They are something to make fun of. In the time of judgment, they will be destroyed. But Jacob's God is not like the idols. He made everything. And Israel is the family that God chose to be his own people. His name is Lord All-Powerful. The word Lord there is Yehovah, meaning, of course, the eternal. We should ask ourselves, is there anything we might have that we believe might have some kind of special power? A lucky rabbit's foot, perhaps. A four-leaf clover. If we carry a lucky rabbit's foot with us, then that would certainly be an example of idolatry. Colossians 3, verse 5, if you would. Run over there. That's Colossians chapter 3. Again, near the beginning at verse 5. Do we actually need a physical object, such as a statue or a painting, to engage in idolatry? Or can we idolize things, that is, other than inanimate objects? Again, that's Colossians 3, verse 5. Mortify therefore your members which are upon the earth, fornication, uncleanness, inordinate affection, evil concupiscence, I'll get that right, and covetousness, which is idolatry. Let me try that again in the contemporary English version. That's a lot easier to read. It says, don't be controlled by your body. Kill every desire for the wrong kind of sex. Don't be immoral or indecent or have evil thoughts. Don't be greedy, which is the same as worshiping idols. Now, many have sexual addictions today. I suppose that might even be considered a form of idolatry. And money can certainly become an idol for us. In fact, anything we put undue emphasis on could become an idol. You may have heard of the television show called American Idol. Yeah, we can idolize people. In fact, people do idolize musicians, public leaders, church leaders, maybe sports teams. But back to the objects that are idolized. I know someone in the church today. This is a long time ago, but they used to carry a particular object on their motorcycle. They told me that this object protected them when they rode their motorcycle. Ask them how they knew that this inanimate object was protecting them. Their answer? Well, I haven't had a wreck yet. Okay. Implying, of course, that this object was responsible for their protection. Would anyone like to guess what this object was that was providing protection when they rode their motorcycle? Any ideas? I'll tell you what it was shortly. We'll come back to that, okay? My personal belief is that anything that we ascribe power to that has no power of its own might be considered an idol. The object carried on that motorcycle would definitely be an example of an idol. That's kind of a brief look at idolatry, but I promise we look at the Christian cross today. So let's take a look at the cross. The word cross is found in the Bible 28 times, only in the New Testament. 22 times it's used in connection with the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. But the remaining 6 times, it's not. I'll list those 6 scriptures if you'd like to check them out. We'll be looking at some of them, but I'll list them right here if you want to put them down. They are Matthew 10, verse 38, Matthew 16, verse 24, Mark 8, verse 34, Mark 10, verse 21, Luke 9, verse 23, and Luke 14, verse 27. Now, basically what we have here, Matthew, Mark, and Luke are basically parallel passages saying the same thing. So you can read either Matthew, Mark, or Luke here. You're going to get the same thing. But all 6 of those refer to the cross, but not of the crucifixion. Let's go ahead and look at the passage in Matthew chapter 16 and verse 24. That's Matthew chapter 16, verse 24. And here we'll find the word cross. I think most of us are familiar with this passage, But does the use of the word cross in this verse make sense? Does it really make any sense? Or could we be missing something maybe? Again, Matthew chapter 16, verse 24. Then said Jesus unto his disciples, If any man will come after me, let him deny himself, and take up his cross, and follow me. Let's examine this passage a little closer. Now, this is Jesus talking to his disciples. And of course, this is directed to us also because we are his disciples today. Jesus says, if any man will come after me. Now here Christ is saying that if we want to follow him, in other words, if we want to be followers of Jesus Christ, if we want to be his disciples, he's about to tell us what we're to do in order to become his disciples. Now first we see that he says we are to deny ourselves. What does he mean by that? What does it mean to deny ourselves? I'll look that up, and the word deny here is the Greek word 533. It's aparniami. What's that?
Easy for you.
Easy for me to say, right. Okay, try it again. It's aparniamami. I even practiced this before, and I still can't say it. Anyway, it's aparniamahi. That's it. I got it right that time. And this means to deny utterly or to disown. So we're to disown ourselves. Well, what does that mean? Well, I wasn't sure about that, so I looked up disown in the dictionary.cambridge.org website. The dictionary there says the definition is to make it known that you no longer have any connection with someone that you are closely connected with. I'd say we're very closely connected to ourselves. But Jesus tells us that we need to disown ourselves, that we're no longer to be our own person, doing our own thing. We now belong to him. We need to disown ourselves and belong to Jesus Christ. I'll read you some other translations here about this. Bible in Basic English says, let him give up all. The Contemporary English Version says, you must forget about yourself. Easy to Read version says, you must stop thinking about yourself and what you want. And God's Word tells us, those who want to come with me must say no to the things they want. So we're to deny ourselves what we want. We need to stop thinking about ourselves and what we want and switch our focus over to Christ. I'd like to read Matthew 16, verse 24 again. Okay. Then said Jesus unto his disciples, if any man will come after me, let him deny himself. In other words, stop focusing on ourselves and focus on him. And take up his cross and follow me. We're told to take up our cross. Well, what does that mean? Today, how would we take up our cross? What is our cross? A great many Christian apologists attempt to make some sort of etherical, spiritual meaning of this. They often try to relate it to some kind of burden. Some maybe will relate it to Christ carrying or bearing his cross on his way to his crucifixion. But is this what Jesus was talking about? That we're on our way to our own crucifixion? When I ask people what it means to take up our cross, most immediately respond with a quote from their church leader as to what it means. But typically they can't explain what it means because they never really understood it for themselves. Now, regardless of what it means to us today, another very good question is this. How did those hearing those words as Jesus actually spoke them understand the meaning of take up their cross? What do they think about that? Now remember, when Jesus had said these words, he had not yet been crucified. Now we might say that the disciples might assume he was talking about the future, but at that time, they really didn't understand about his coming crucifixion. They didn't get it. Hold your place there if you want for reference, but if you would turn over with me to Mark chapter 9 and verse 31. That's Mark chapter 9, verse 31. Now here you're going to find out that although Jesus told his disciples that he was to be killed, they just didn't understand it. It just wasn't tangible to them. They really didn't even believe it, let alone probably the fact he would be crucified. But again, Mark chapter 9, verse 31. For he taught his disciples and said to them, the Son of Man is delivered into the hands of men, and they shall kill him. And after that he is killed, he shall rise the third day. So Jesus clearly told his disciples he'd be killed, and he would be resurrected as well. They should know that, right? You think they would. Verse 32. But they understood not that saying, and were afraid to ask him. Wow. I don't think the disciples really believed that Jesus was going to be killed. They just didn't understand. It's like when Peter didn't understand when Jesus washed his feet. Peter didn't understand what was going on at the time. You remember in John 13, verse 7, Jesus said to Peter, he said, what I do you know not now, but you shall know hereafter. I suspect the disciples actually understood very little until after they received the Holy Spirit, which of course teaches all things. And when Christ was crucified, I don't think they actually expected him to be resurrected, although he had told them that beforehand. The word cross doesn't appear anywhere in our Bibles until we read about the disciples taking up the cross. I don't see any way that the disciples could have understood what Jesus was talking about when he told them to take up their crosses. Not if he was referring to how he was to die in the future anyway. And regardless of how people have tried to explain this passage to me in the past, it just never made any sense. Let's take a look at the word cross used in these passages about taking up our cross. Let's see if we can make some sense of this passage. The word cross in Matthew 16, verse 24, for example, I think we just read that. That's the Greek word 4716 in Strong's dictionary. Now, actually, every time we see the word cross appear in our Bibles, remember that's a total of 28 times, it's always the exact same Greek word with the exact same meaning, regardless of where it's found in our Bibles. So we can't change the meaning of it. It's the same word. So what is the meaning of the word cross in our Bibles? Does the word cross in our Bibles, when we read of Jesus' crucifixion, does it refer to two pieces of wood nailed together to form a roughly elongated plus symbol? The familiar symbol we see today? Well, again, the word cross is G4716 in Strong's dictionary. It's the Greek word stauros. The primary definition is a stake or a post as set upright. Interesting. Using the meaning of the original Greek word stauros, meaning a stake in the ground, let's read Jesus' words again. But this time, using a more accurate word translated from the Greek word stauros, meaning stake. Jesus said, if any man will come after me, let him deny himself and take up his stake or stakes, take up his stakes and follow me. I typed in the phrase take up stakes in a web search engine, and this is what I found. From idioms.thefreedictionary.com, the topic pull up stakes appeared. The first definition was a literal meaning. It was this: to pull up tent stakes to take down a tent in preparation to leaving. An example would be, let's pull up stakes and head home before the storm hits. I could have used that yesterday, I think. Second definition, this time a figurative meaning. This definition reads as to end one's ties to a particular place. To get ready to move away from a place one has lived or worked for a long time. The example given here in the dictionary was, even after all these years, pulling up stakes is easier than you think. It's time to pull up stakes and move on. It's time to pull up stakes and move on. Sometimes we may stay where we're at too long. If that's the case, we need to take up our stakes, if you will, and move on. Now, we don't literally do this today when we move on. Most of us today don't live in tents, although that is becoming more common. We're seeing more and more of the homeless and those who are refugees, it seems. They're living in tents. Probably most of us understand this idiom today. Now, this might not have been an idiom in Jesus' day, but I would say back then it was literally very common. I suspect there were many people living in tents then. They would not necessarily need to understand the meaning of taking up their stakes as in the idiom that we have today. I think they would have had a good literal understanding of what it meant to take up or pull up their stakes. Those that literally followed Jesus then actually left where they lived and physically followed him, right? They pulled up their stakes and followed him. I do believe there's also a spiritual aspect to this that applied not only to them back then, but to all of us today as well. Pulling up stakes means we're leaving where we are. When we became disciples of Jesus Christ, did we stay where we were? I'm not talking about our physical location, maybe the house we live in. No, as we begin to follow Jesus Christ, we left behind where we were. We left the Easter bunnies behind. We rejected Santa Claus as the giver of gifts and restored that honor to God. We rejected the commandments of men and began to observe God's commandments. We all need to leave where we were spiritually and follow the teachings of Jesus Christ. We need to take up our spiritual stakes to keep us fixed where we are and move forward, moving toward Christ, toward truth. In fact, we never want to just stop growing and stay where we are. We never want to stop moving or progressing. We never want to become stagnant in our walk with God. We want to be constantly learning, repenting, and growing toward that perfection that God would have us do. Luke 9, verse 23. That's Luke chapter 9, verse 23. So, how long can we stay stagnant in one place, or should we? Before we need to pull up our stakes and move again. How often should we repent and move forward from where we are? Again, Luke chapter 9, verse 23. And this is Jesus talking again. And he said to them all, "If any man will come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow me." We all need to take up or pull up our stakes daily and continue to follow Jesus Christ. We should never become complacent and just stay where we are. We should always be ready to move. I know that breaking from some of the traditions we've held from childhood can often be very difficult for us. It's sometimes hard to admit where we may have been in error, even if it was sincere error. But we can't stay where we are. We need to repent daily. We need to pull up our stakes and move ahead every single day. But back to the word cross in our Bibles. In 6 verses, we're told to pick up our cross and follow Jesus. It certainly makes sense that the word cross here should be translated as stake, as Strong's dictionary correctly defines it. It also makes sense in the context of the rest of these verses. Think about it. If any man will come after me, let him deny himself. Let him stop thinking of himself. Don't think of yourself all the time. Think about Christ and pick up his stakes, if you will, and move from wherever he currently is. And follow me, Jesus says. So that verse makes a lot of sense in the sense of pulling up stakes and moving, denying ourselves and moving with Christ, which is what the disciples did, the original disciples. Okay. But the word cross also appears where we read about Jesus' crucifixion. So should the word cross there also be translated as stake as well? Was Jesus nailed to a cross, as we've been taught? An upright piece of wood with a cross member attached? Or was it just a pole, a stake, you might say, a piece of wood out there? The original Greek word stauros would seem to indicate it was an upright pole with no cross member. Now, it can be difficult to even imagine that Jesus was not crucified on a cross-shaped object, especially since the cross has been a pervasive symbol throughout Christianity for hundreds of years. Is the instrument of Christ's death mentioned elsewhere in the Bible where the word cross is not used? Is it anywhere else in the Bible? Turn over to Acts chapter 5, if you would, and I'll try not to hit my microphone again. That's Acts chapter 5. We'll go to verse 30. There are at least 5 other verses in our Bible to describe how Jesus was slain, you might say. How do they describe the instrument of Jesus' death? Do they indicate it was a cross or an upright stake or maybe something else? Let's see again, Acts chapter 5, verse 30. It reads, "The God of our fathers raised up Jesus, whom you slew and hanged on a tree." A tree. Here the English word cross, or even the Greek word stauros, is not used. Instead, Jesus is said to have died on a tree. But a tree doesn't easily lend itself to have a cross piece. Let's look at the original Greek word here. The word tree here in Acts 5, verse 30 is G3586 in Strong's. It's the Greek word zulon. It means timber. By implication, a stick, club, or tree, or other wooden article or substance. We can find the word tree used in the exact same way in Acts 10, verse 39, and Acts 13, verse 29. In fact, let me read them to you just now. We'll just read through this real quick for the sake of time. Acts 10, verse 39 says, speaking of Christ, "And we are witnesses of all things which he did, both in the land of the Jews and in Jerusalem, whom they slew and hanged on a tree." Acts 13, verse 29. "And when they had fulfilled all that was written of him, they took him down from the tree and laid him in a sepulchre." If you like, let's turn over to 1 Peter and read one more example of this. That's 1 Peter chapter 2. 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 24. Now, everywhere we're seeing the word tree here today, it's always the Greek word zulon, meaning timber, by implication a stick, club, or a tree. There are other occurrences of the word tree in the New Testament, but they all indicate a specific type of tree, such as a fig tree or sycamore tree. But they all seem to indicate a tree, or at least a good part of a tree. So again, let's look at 1 Peter 2, verse 24. Again, speaking of Christ. "Who his own self bare our sins in his own body on the tree, that we, being dead to sin, should live unto righteousness, by whose stripes you were healed." I'll go ahead and read one more to you, and that comes from Galatians chapter 3, verse 13, which says, "Christ has redeemed us from the curse of the law, being made a curse for us. For it is written, Cursed is every one that hangs on a tree." Again, the Greek zulon, translated as tree in the King James, would appear to be more of an upright pole. There's no suggestion of a cross piece. It might be interesting to note that most English Bible translations translate zulon as tree. However, there are a few translations, such as the paraphrased Good News Bible and the God's Word version, that actually translate zulon as cross. Could it be that the translators, having been taught cross for so many years, were ready to translate any Greek word associated with the instrument of Christ's death as a cross, no matter what? Let's say for the moment that Christ was not crucified on an actual cross. Where might the idea of a cross originate? Where would it have come from? I'd like to quote from a book entitled Too Long in the Sun, written by Richard Reeves. Quote, "The symbol of the cross did not originate at the time of Christ. It has been a symbol used by sun worshippers since the time of Babel." Close quote. Now, in his book, there are many, many images of crosses that existed long before the time of Christ. They vary some, but they're all there pretty much. Again, quoting from the book I just told you about, quote, "The cross was used in the worship of the ancient mystery religions. it has been identified as the letter T, the initial of the sun god Tammuz. Remember, in the book of Ezekiel, the women were weeping for Tammuz. Close quote. Archaeologists have found images of the false god Tammuz carved into rocks. They depict him holding a cross, hundreds of years before Christ. Is it possible that, like other traditions of the heathen, the symbol of the cross was inserted into Christianity somewhere along the way? Is that possible? The Emperor Constantine was a sun god worshiper. He was not a Christian, at least not at first. But in 321 AD, it's alleged that he saw a vision of a cross in the sky before a battle. Now, he was said to convert to Christianity after that. But many were skeptical of Constantine's conversion to Christianity. For one example, he continued to have coins made that honored his former sun god. Those coins featured an image of the sun with the caption below it, Sol Invictus, meaning the inconquerable sun. Nevertheless, many credit Constantine for establishing the cross as a Christian symbol. Let's turn over to John 20, if you would. That's John 20 and verse 24. John chapter 20, verse 24. If Jesus was crucified on a cross, there are many that say that nailing his hands to that cross piece wouldn't be inadequate, basically, to hold him there. That the strength of his hands, the bones and the flesh there, would not hold. It would tear out. That the hand itself is structurally too weak to have supported that weight. And that they would have, out of necessity, put the nails through his wrist so that his hands didn't tear away. Is that true? Some people believe that. Did the Romans drive nails through Jesus' wrists, as many believe would be necessary if he was crucified on an actual cross? Of course, there's others that say possibly his wrists were tied onto the cross. They weren't nailed at all. That's what people say. Let's see what our Bible says. Again, John 20, verse 24. John 20, verse 24. Now here Thomas had not yet seen Jesus after his resurrection. As I said before, he was skeptical that Jesus had even been resurrected, as he said he would be. He told them, but they just didn't believe it. But look at what Thomas said. Look at what he said he wanted proof for, if indeed there was a resurrected and living Jesus Christ. What did he want to see? John 20, verse 24. But Thomas, one of the 12, called Didymus, was not with them when Jesus came. He didn't see him when he came to them the first time. The other disciples therefore said to him, "We have seen the Lord." But he said to them, he was skeptical, "Except I shall see in his hands the print of the nails, and put my finger into the print of the nails, and thrust my hand into his side, I will not believe." Notice that Thomas specifically mentioned that he wants to see the prints of the nails left in Jesus' hands, not in his wrists. This suggests that Christ had the nails driven through his hands and not his wrists. Of course, it also precludes using ropes or something that ties his wrists up there. Let's continue reading in verse 26. And after 8 days, again, his disciples were within, and Thomas with them this time. Then came Jesus, the doors being shut, and stood in their midst, and said, "Peace be unto you." Then said he to Thomas, "Reach your finger here, and behold my hands." Behold my hands. Here Jesus says it was his hands, not his wrists. And if you're wondering, the word hand here is the Greek word chair, and it refers to the hand. Some point out that a sign was placed on the cross, or the pole, whatever, with the inscription, "The King of the Jews." Let's turn over to Luke 23, chapter 23, verse 38. That's Luke chapter 23, verse 38. I know some suggest that those words would have required a cross piece to place the words on, proving it was a cross. But of course, Jesus' arms and shoulders would have obscured those words if they're on the cross itself, because his arms would have been out there. But anyway, let's look at Luke 23, verse 38, and see what it really says. Here Jesus had been crucified and mocked. Luke 23:38. And a superscription also was written over him in letters of Greek and Latin and Hebrew, "This is the King of the Jews." The contemporary English version reads, "Above him was a sign that said, 'This is the King of the Jews.'" If the sign was above him, then it would have been over his head, not behind his arms or shoulders on a crossbar. Okay, I'll tell you what. To end our discussion of the cross versus stake, you might say, or poll today, I'd like to read part of an article from abcnews.go.com. It was written by Russell Goldman and published on July 1st, 2010. It was entitled, "Jesus Christ May Not Have Died on a Cross." I'll quote this article to you. Here we go. Quote, "For 2,000 years, the crucifix has been a potent symbol of both Jesus Christ's death and Christianity. Now, one Swedish theologian says that despite the crucifix's proliferation in art and literature, there's scant evidence in the Bible or other ancient sources to indicate that Christ was killed on a cross. Gunnar Samuelson, an evangelical preacher and theologian, says he spent 3 years combining thousands of ancient texts to research his recently completed 400-page doctoral thesis, Crucifixion in Antiquity. What he discovered, he said, came as a shock. While there were numerous references to suspension devices used for executions at the time of Christ's death, he could find no explicit references to the classic T-shaped cross. There is no distinct punishment called crucifixion, no distinct punishment device called a crucifix anywhere mentioned in any of the ancient texts, including the Gospels, he told abcnews.com. Samuelson devoutly believes the story of Jesus' death and resurrection, but says for generations people have misinterpreted and mistranslated the Greek word stauros to mean crucifix, when really the term just means a suspension device, which might have been anything such as a, quote, pole or tree trunk, close quote. Are we 100% sure that Jesus was crucified on a stake or a pole and not a cross with a crosspiece? I don't believe we can know for certain the exact shape of the instrument of his crucifixion. Turns out probably this has been mostly just an academic exercise. Does it matter whether Christ was crucified on a cross or a pole? No. The important thing is he sacrificed himself for us. The actual details of how the crucifixion took place are really not that important. But we have to be careful that we don't make an idol out of the symbol of the cross today. We know that the cross was used by the heathen in their worship long before Christ came the first time. Remember the person I mentioned earlier that was riding a motorcycle? I asked you to imagine what that object might be that they used to protect them. Well, as you might have guessed, that object was a wooden cross. Now, a wooden cross can't protect someone from having an accident, but God can. Now, something I wasn't aware of is this person also told me they carried with them on their motorcycle a demon bell. A demon bell. I've never heard of a demon bell before. You can just do a search for demon bells on Amazon, for example. You'll find that there are all manner of demon bells available for sale. Now, they're supposed to protect one from road demons when riding motorcycles. I'm not making this up. You can check it out. But these are another form of an idol that really can do nothing. But people may place their faith in an idol, and if so, it's very much misplaced. You know, I have a brother in the faith that drives for a living in the metro Atlanta area. He drives in heavy traffic about every day and has done so for many years. He's seen lots of accidents. Despite the odds and several close calls, he has yet to be in a traffic accident. Does he carry a cross, a rabbit's foot, or a demon bell to protect him? Nope. He prays to the one true God for protection. I know that many others join him in his prayer for protection as he drives daily in this heavy and fairly dangerous traffic. So far, he's been accident-free despite the odds against him. Now, while some may say that the Christian cross is nothing more than a symbol that reminds them of the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, many today indeed have turned that cross into an idol. Are there any of us, maybe today, that use the symbol of a cross as some kind of idol? Or anything else for that matter? We might want to give this all some thought. Idolatry can be tricky. Like I said, it can even be a person or something else, money. To conclude today, the very first commandment of God's 10 commandments tell us not to have any idols. Despite the first commandment, we find many Christians today doing just that. Our example was the Christmas tree, for one that was identified specifically in Jeremiah 10, yet many Christians continue to use them today. As for us, we shouldn't have any idols, but we always need to remember that these idols others have won't harm us. They're only pieces of wood or metal or plastic or maybe a dead tree, I don't know. They have no power in and of themselves. And we said idols can be things other than physical objects like money or whatever. We saw where Jesus said, "If any man will come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow me." We're to stop doing whatever we were doing. We're to deny ourselves, deny what we want, and follow him. We're to follow the ways and teachings of Jesus Christ, repenting daily, taking up our stakes daily, as we continue to learn and grow, as we give up forms of idolatry such as Christmas trees, Easter bunnies, and in some cases, even crosses. We took a look at the word cross in our Bibles today. From Strong's dictionary, the original Greek word stauros seems to indicate that it may have been actually a stake or a pole rather than the cross that Christ was crucified on. And that's consistent with our taking up stakes to follow him. Additional evidence also seemed to indicate that the instrument of Christ's crucifixion may have actually been a pole or a stake. We saw the word tree was used in many cases to describe the object that was used to crucify Jesus. We also found out that crosses of various types were already in use by the heathen centuries before the birth of Christ, and that the Roman Emperor Constantine adopted and advocated the cross for Christianity as he allegedly converted to Christianity. We saw that researchers seem to have their doubts about the cross. Many seem to favor a pole or stake instead. And as I said, I don't believe that we can determine with 100% accuracy the exact instrument that was used to crucify our Savior. And of course, knowing the exact instrument of Christ's death is not really that important. What is important is that he died for us. As I said, some Christians today do use the symbol of the cross as an idol. But the cross, again, is an inanimate object. The cross itself has no actual power then. It has no power today. It doesn't have the power to protect us from motorcycle accidents or from vampires. It can't protect us from anything. Idols can't do good. Neither is it in them to do evil. No, we should always rely on the true God for our protection. For our last scripture today, let's go over to Habakkuk, chapter 2, verse 18. That's Habakkuk, chapter 2. Now, if you have trouble locating Habakkuk, it's the third book past Jonah in the Old Testament. We don't often read from Habakkuk, but I believe this will sum things up nicely as we conclude today. Again, that's Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 18. I'd like to read this again from the Contemporary English Version. Again, you can read it in whatever version you have. Here's what we read in Habakkuk 2, verse 18. What is an idol worth? It's merely a false god. Why trust a speechless image made from wood or metal by human hands? What can you learn from idols covered with silver or gold? They can't even breathe. Pity anyone who says to an idol of wood or stone, "Get up and do something." let all the world be silent. The Lord is present in his holy temple. As we approach this year's Passover season, always remember it was Jesus Christ that was sacrificed for us. It wasn't a cross or a stake or anything else. Let's never have any kind of idols. We should always place our trust in God alone. Let's look to the one true God for protection and favor. Let's reject anything we might find to be an idol today and continue to pull up our stakes daily and follow Jesus Christ. I believe time is growing short. Especially today, we need the blessings and the protection that only comes from the one true God.